My name is Alon Meron. I'm a tutor in the Design Products Department, Royal College of Art. I'm a designer with a background in making, and I'd like to welcome everyone for this conversation. We're having this conversation to celebrate the end of this year, the launch of RCA 2020, the second year of the collaboration with OPPO. Shall we start with an introduction of everyone involved?
Yes, certainly. My name is Paul Anderson. I'm Dean of the School of Design at the Royal College of Art.
My name's Ashley. I'm Professor of Design Innovation in the School of Design. I'm Acting Head of Programme for the MA Design Products and Design Futures pathway. And I'm Head of Programme for the Master of Research in Healthcare Design and Head of Postgraduate Research in the Design School.
Hello, I'm Juju, Jintong, Head of OPPO London Design Centre, and I'm also RCA alumni.
Hello, I'm Roberto Ruffoni. I'm a Design Research Manager at OPPO Design Centre in London for Europe.
Hi, I'm a student, just recently graduated from the Royal College of Art in Design Products.
Hi, I'm Matthew. I'm also recently graduated from the Royal College of Art, and I was taking part of this OPPO brief.
Right, thank you very much. So we're here to talk about this year's collaboration between RCA Design Products and OPPO. So this year, the students were working on a brief under the title of Humanizing Technology. And this collaboration has led to an exhibition, a part of the RCA 2020 online show. This year has been a very unusual year. We're launching an online show for the first time in history. Ashley, would you tell us about that?
Yes, Alon, happy to tell you about the why we're kind of doing this big online launch. I think there's several reasons for it. First of all, obviously with COVID-19, we're all social distance. So, spending several months all very closely packed into workshop studios and then finally into exhibition space is something that we obviously realised that we weren't able to facilitate. But I think actually more importantly, we've also realised that our sort of graduate shows have been very local and very central to kind of, South Kensington, and it's very London based. And we have a global range of people who are interested in the kind of work that we're doing, friends, families of students, potential employers. So it's actually important for us to build this big global platform so we can push our work out there, show what we're doing, and to give people an idea of scale. This is over 1,000 students that we're showcasing their work onto this platform. So it's a really massive undertaking, and it also allows people to actually start to look across some very diverse disciplines, from design products through to, say, painting, sculpture, photography, printmaking, communication, architecture. So people find some very interesting ideas stitched between some of the students' projects that you probably wouldn't be able to do so easily if they're all in one physical exhibiting space. So those are certainly some of the reasons why we've decided to have a big online platform this year.
Did you find that students' work changed in response to these conditions? Students been working at home rather than the college, for example?
I think it has. To be honest, I think when you look at the platform, you probably wouldn't realise that we'd just been through COVID-19 by the quality of the output. So the outputs of the work are pretty fantastic, actually. And people have found lots of very smart, kind of maybe innovative ways of repurposing materials, bits of machinery, processes, and there's been a mix actually. Some of our students have done very localized making, so literally to the end of their streets and back, and they've been through dustbins and recycle tips and things people leaving out on the streets, while other students have actually been sourcing products globally. So there's still people shipping parts in from all over the world to make their projects, or they're using platforms like RS Components to order electronic parts. They've got little 3D printers at home. So actually it's interesting that we've seen some very sophisticated technical making as well. So it's been certainly a huge learning curve. And I think probably the biggest curve has been about repurposing our communication platforms as well, and doing things like having a virtual studio or open studio where people leave their Zoom channels open and we can hear voices around the world talking to each other and giving support as well. So we have the kind of social side.
So this year's brief was titled Humanizing Technology, which I think is more appropriate than ever to work under this title. Juju, Roberto, can you say a couple of words about the inspiration for that kind of brief, or the relevance for it from OPPO's side?
Yeah, sure. At OPPO London Design Centre, we kind of come up with a brief every year that we see from a designer point of view to conclude a trend in the world and to explore that relevant field. So we set up this last year and we started this project with the Royal College of Art students. So that was the very beginning, and we think that humanizing technology, it's something that we need to do this year, and we believe that technology should adapt for a human's life, not the other way around. And it shouldn't really scream for attention, but being like naturally integrated into products through design and to create intuitive experience for our end users. So I think humanizing technology is really a broad topic, but from my experience in Royal College of Art and our understanding of the college and the students, I think this is like a platform that we want to give to the student, that we want to see from the student, the creativity, the bold idea, and how the student from academic point of view, how they think about humanizing technology. I think this is a really exciting topic. So yeah, that's why we started.
When we started our activity at the London Design Centre, this was one of the themes that we set as absolutely central as part of our activities to bring a European perspective to OPPO. So in the moment when we decided to connect to the education sector, in particular with excellence of RCA, we thought that it would be extremely valuable from our side to understand how the students will see this topic, because this is such an important area at the moment. You see new products coming on the market constantly that are communicated in terms of specs, specifications, power, things like that. But what it's really about, what are they going to do for my life? How are they going to fit into my life? So we really wanted to see how the students will respond to this kind of question.
Paul and Ashley, this is for you. So the RCA has a long history of collaboration with external partners, commercial partners. How is this topic relevant to the RCA as an educational institution, as a business?
We were set up in 1837 as the Government School of Design, and one of the reasons we were set up is that in that era, the UK was making some great pieces of engineering, some great machines, but they weren't actually very well designed. And our international partners were already out competing us in terms of design and aesthetics. That's one of the reasons actually the RCA was set up. So what you could really say there is that we were set up to bridge the gap between technology and society. And that gap is still there. You know, there are still gaps between the machines we make, the technologies that we develop, and how they point towards helping us have a safer and more effective, more productive society. So it's still a big question, actually. And I think, if anything, the questions are much more complex now than they were in 1837. And if you look at the design's role in the future of the world, it's all about this. And this is the number one question, is how do we actually reconfigure ourselves so that we can evolve technologies that support the whole ecosystem of the world. So I think that is the central question, something very, very important for us to kind of think about.
One obvious question now is, has any of that changed? Has any of that been emphasized in the current era, in light of the past couple of months?
Well, I think the lockdown and the COVID crisis has kind of pressed the fast forward button on all this, and you could think that actually it's a kind of practice for things that might come to us in the future. You know, that some of the climate changes or other things that might take place that tip the balance of the planet might also, really reduce our abilities to travel or to do the things that we've done before very fluidly and very easily. So it's a good wake-up call. It's something that design should be trying to maybe leverage and understand how we can learn the lessons from this and push things forward, and maybe even question the model of design that we've developed. And mostly design is actually very, very good at responding to problems and spotting problems that need solving. But, potentially we need to turn that around and think, well, could we have a more proactive version of design? Could we evolve a version which is better at spotting some of these challenges and figure out how we shape people and their behaviors through technology to be more adaptive to some of these issues?
That's a perspective that is, I think, maybe more prevailing in the academy, possibly. Giorgio, Roberto, how does that impact from your perspective, from the side of industry and business?
It's our mission to really bring better technologies and to enhance everyone's life. And technologies everywhere, is all around us. From OPPO perspective, we are a global technology company. We have more than 300 million users all around the world, and we do have the responsibility to find a direction of future technology so that it helps to improve human life.
The branch through which you engage with institutions like the RCA, that's your new-ish London Design Centre. Could you tell us a little bit about the Design Centre in London?
Yeah, sure. So after 2018, after our launch event in Paris of our Finex, we decided to have this design center in Europe, but we haven't decided where to have it. And at the end of that year, we decided and we established this London Design Center. So we're looking into the future of what OPPO is going to do, what designers can define, how we can change the world in a way. So we are doing some kind of research that including like static research, CMF, tech scouting, user behavior research, all this kind of things, and we feed back to our headquarters. And also we're trying to build relationship with different partners and do some collaborations around the world. So with the advantage of a global vision, that's what our team is doing.
And how did the partnership with the RCA come about?
As I mentioned, I graduated from Royal College of Art. So I know the college, I know the topics, I know how students are working for different topics. And I think this is going to be a really fantastic opportunity for both of us to learn and feedback to each other. And also, this is our second year of collaboration. We're trying to discover what is the future of design. As a leading technology company, we can be able to bring to the students of our insights from industry users, like market insights, trends, technology, this kind of information that we believe will be very helpful for the students to get to know. And also from a designer point of view, it's also very important for us ourselves to get to absorb new ideas. And I think RCA is giving us this opportunity to look back and look into what design is really about.
It must be a very nice opportunity to be able to return to working with RCA students, having been a student yourself and now coming from the side of industry.
One thing that could be quite useful would be to have Ashley's and Paul's maybe thoughts about the theme of humanizing technology, which is very central for me. For example, was surprising that basically as soon as we finished finalizing the theme with design products, last year in December, we were in Shenzhen and we found that the Design Society, which is part of the DNA London, there was a very big exhibition about humans and technology and about the humanization of technology together with the Ars Electronica Center. So we think this is an extremely central theme and it will be really good for us to have that perspective on this.
I think, humanizing technology, one of the interesting things is most of the innovation that we see in the world is actually technology-led. So people make a better machine, a faster machine, or a piece of software, and then we kind of try and find a way to monetize it and push it into the market. And actually still the minority of innovations in the world are design-led, which means that actually a balance between the needs of people and the capabilities of technology. But I think there's also that third piece, which we're looking for here as well, which is not just balancing people and technology, but also balancing climate and balancing environment. And I think that's the kind of third piece that we're sort of pushing towards. And it's certainly something that in the School of Design is a huge focus for our work and our thinking across multiple platforms, programs, students, academic staff, research. It's those kind of three pieces that we haven't quite connected yet. And certainly, OPPO's support in terms of looking at humanizing technology is essential for kind of trying to explore those kind of big global challenges.
Year's brief is going to be about that third point of the triangle. So not about technology, not about humans, about nature, the world, the globe.
Yeah, and some of our researchers are looking at things called xeno-design. So they're looking at how on earth do you design a product without putting a human being at the top of the value chain. So how do we actually do that? How do we haven't really explored those kind of ideas in product design or industrial design to any huge detail, but it's actually one of the things that is pretty essential as we go forwards. So that's going to be an interesting piece of work as well, is to understand whole new models of value in design.
I think for me as well that we're in a very interesting time. I think things are changing dramatically, and I don't just mean the current situation that the human race finds itself in, but I think in design terms, we need to be much more planet thinking. We need to really think very, very big indeed. And we need to not just be in the business of creating new ideas or products, but have the responsibility for the life of that product. And indeed, when the life of that product is finished, and can we reuse it or readapt it? And can we do it in such a way it doesn't actually impact or harm the environment? And I think for me, from an ethical point of view, the users, whoever they may be, are now being far more intelligent and demanding in what they need in terms of a product, or indeed the services resulting from a product. And certainly in the School of Design, we are, as we speak, got a very good team together, really questioning the world of design for ethics and indeed design for safety. I think these are two themes that we need to carry forward into the future if we're being successful and aware of not just the human being as a user, but the environment they operate in and what goes on in that environment. I think users are far more demanding in terms of not just having a product that's based on basic functionality. I think these are interesting concepts. We're probably still some way away from that. But I think for me, just adding greater value to the product, not just in terms of its base functionality. And we can see a lot of that thinking coming through in our student outputs and their work. And I think that's incredibly exciting.
Thank you so much. This is extremely inspiring because also from our point of view, one of the themes that are most important or that were most important when we defined this brief was also to look for a new angle to approach sustainability. And sustainability is surely something where it would be very interesting to hear an opinion also from Alon and the students. Sustainability is surely about the ethics that Paul, for example, was talking about in terms of like, how do we design the product as a system where the human is at the top, but also is in terms of the mobile phone, which is still our main product. You know, it's very important. It's connecting us. It's something that helped us through this pandemic, but at the same time, it's a type of product that risks to be not always used in the right way. So there is, for example, a lot of interest around the area of digital well-being and how can we control the use of digital devices, which is, for example, one of the areas that Anna has explored during internship with us. So yeah, it will be very interesting to know your opinion about how can we create a relationship with technology that is more balanced and that takes the human into consideration.
I think it would be really interesting to see the role that we project onto technology, because we internalize technology and we project our human condition, if you want, on it. So it can come across as our savior or the great menacing threat. And I think now with COVID-19, humanity, like on the greatest scale possible, is going through some serious mental shift. And it would be really interesting to see what kind of state of being we're going to want technology to kind of represent or contain for us.
I think it's a great point, Alon. I think the other thing to say is that can technology provide other types of functionality? Roberto says, even if it's to do with safety or well-being and assisting you in everyday tasks, I think that's got to be highly valuable going forward. And there are many technologies, particularly when you get into Bluetooth devices, which on the one hand are very supportive to your lifestyle in a connected world. But the other thing about it is ethically, from that standpoint, the sharing of your data or what you're doing within your home or with others, these are equally now probably just as important factors as the device itself and how it functions and how it looks. So the hidden or unseen aspects of you using a product are probably ever more important.
I had a A question for Alon as a tutor. How have you seen the work of your student evolving, like student working with such an established company like OPPO? I guess it's really interesting from your point of view as a tutor.
I think as students, until the point where you become an employee, it's almost your duty to be asking the difficult questions and trying to expose everything that is not sustainable or just plain wrong about the world that we live in. So we prepare you for a certain job, if you like, and that job is a part of industry. So for good or for bad, we as designers are part of that system. In the academia, you have the privilege of criticizing it with no repercussions. You can kind of really go against the grain. And I think it's a point of very positive tension where you as students get kind of plonked into an industrial setting and get to work with professional designers. In the example of OPPO design team that came from China, that is, it literally brings to one point the two opposite ends of the process. So you as conceptualists, you know, kind of breeders of ideas, and on the other end, people who need to manufacture, take care of the accounting, making sure that everything is profitable. I think it's a kind of it's a very positively tense point to be in. I was very happy to see that the projects were not toned down on account of that. So there was no deliberate attempt to try and kind of create the next mobile phone or something that will be very immediately applicable, which I found very, very encouraging. I thought it was kind of, it shines a very positive light on us as an institution in that we create rebels, if you like, or people with a sharp sense of criticism.
If I can touch on this, I completely agree with you. At the same time, it is also true that the themes that the students have explored are all extremely relevant to what we are doing today in our daily work. It is true, and it was good that they didn't try to design the next smartphone, but at the same time, they touched all the themes that we need to deal with and in our daily life, trying to design the next smartphone, which is extremely valuable for us. So for example, there was some projects looking at how machines, the one from Warang Luo, the domestic domesticator, that was trying to look at how machines can learn from the users, but not just to track them, recommend them something, but how the machine and the user can have this kind of bidirectional relation, and they learn from each other, and how to make machine express themselves with a more human language. Obviously, the final solution is much more expressive in the type of project, but the underlying question and the strategies that the students take, they can teach us a lot for sure.
Yeah. I totally agree, Roberto. I thought that was a fascinating project from the point of view of all of the kind of questions that it asks, and that we've spent, you know, a few tens of thousands of years, or over 10,000 years, domesticating animals, you know, and actually changing their DNA very, very slowly over time by putting them into compounds and giving them certain sorts of food and doing various things. And now suddenly we have technologies which can turn this around. And so, in fact, we have technologies which can start domesticating us and also changing our DNA and changing the way that we behave. And so I think that's the kind of fascinating angle of his project, and especially the way that he's presented it from the AI product's point of view towards the consumer. That inside out perspective, I think, is really interesting. And some of the challenges that we talked about earlier, how we humanize technology, or maybe how we humanize humans, is actually you know, one of the things this can actually point towards.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think there were many projects that looked at things that are very valuable for us. For example, from the point of view of sustainability, like Eric's project, like Werloop, was very poignant from the point of view of trying to work on the behavior of people instead of trying to find just a technological solution. And at the same time, also Lilin, Jarui, they both very innovative ways at looking at how do you manage energy in the home, for example, how do you bring energy to your device, or how can you customize and transform your devices. So I really have to say, when I arrived to the point of having to, let's say, compile all the projects in the document to check and to start thinking about what was the outcome of this year, I realized that the themes that the student choose to approach were all extremely deep and all extremely relevant for us. Absolutely.
I think that the students' work also touched on a really wide range of human qualities. So when we think about technology, very often the prominent term is efficiency. Technology makes us more efficient to the point where we become, or where we feel inadequate in compared to our technology. And so the domesticator, for example, that really pushes the point of our machines possibly outgrowing us and starting to have their own life going on. But the broad range of human traits or human qualities that the students were touching on, for me, it really exemplified the point in humanizing technology rather than technologizing humanity, if you can say. So it was good to see the openness and the sensitivity to all these different qualities that we have in us as humans. It would be really good to hear from the students' perspective of this project. Matthew, maybe we can begin with you. Could you tell us a bit about how you interpreted the brief? What was the meaning of humanizing technology for you?
Yeah, what I found interesting in this brief, mostly the way the OPPO was seeing technology as something more human, more integrated. So I really wanted to see this technology as something more accessible, more intuitive for people, especially for children. So bringing the layers of playfulness and fun and make technology more fun and playful somehow.
Introducing technology to children sometimes can be a bit of an uphill struggle. How did you go about that?
That's true. With the pandemic, it was quite hard to approach the children, but when then you start thinking like, how can I manage this? And I was starting to talk with teachers. I was even talking with my previous teacher, like when I was 10 years old. And that was fantastic. Also talking with parents, because this is what mostly at this moment during the pandemic, when the parents and the children had to bond together to create at home. And that was the best moment to ask this kind of feedback, like what kind of activities they need to do, they want to do, and what they like, what they do, what they don't. And that was interesting feedback. And a bit later, when it was again possible to see outside people, then I was able to babysit like some children, and then like during the babysitting, like making my own workshop and testing my toys and my robot with them. So that was funny, like really was both fun and very efficient.
Any significant kind of insights or things that you found were very helpful in working with a partner like OPPO?
Because I was really extracting the sensor. The general idea was extracting the sensor from the smartphone. That was the first project, the first idea with SmartKit. And then Animate came and it was inspired by extracting those sensors and make it more accessible, more easy to understand. And I wanted to build something from those sensors. So it was really interesting to talk with OPPO about what sensor in the phone, how do you communicate the sensor, what they do. And that was really inspiring, because that was the goal of this project, to make electronic more accessible.
I think you touched on something that may have been an unexpected benefit of the situation. So your initial project it started with the actual phone at the heart of it. The collaboration was meant to end in April with the show at Milan, but that didn't come to be. And the result was that you continued that exploration and ended up with your second project, which is far more abstract, sort of strips the technology from the mobile phone that surrounds it and kind of focus on the bare elements of it. I thought that was a really nice linear development of the project. Anna, would like to hear about your project and also the internship that you had with OPPO. So you had the opportunity to do a 3-month internship with OPPO following last year's project. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So yeah, I was very lucky in a way to be able to balance or split my time between OPPO and RCA. And I was doing two very different projects, which actually were also very interesting. RCA, I was actually working on furniture design. And at the same time at OPPO, I was actually working with a lot of new technology because I was part of the tech scouting research. It was also about building scenarios. It was about researching on new trends and users behaviors. And I think altogether, for me, it was very interesting to jump always between these two projects, because even though they feel very separate, it actually brought me to my third project, which I'm not presenting here, the RC 220, but which is about fun technology and in general inclusion and calm technology and the relationship actually that you can look from the built environment and how you can actually bring that into technology. So I did a book, and the book is actually very influenced from my experience at OPPO. The brief was the same, was about humanizing technology, but even more about like in general digital well-being. I think the ability to spend time on researching and developing scenarios and also then bringing that with actually the research on technology was really helpful for me to think of the future of the phone in general. I think it was really very, very interesting experience.
If I can add something a bit more about Anna's experience, I've been very lucky myself to be mentoring Anna when she joined our office in London for an internship. And one thing we tried to do was try to amplify something that we have seen as very valuable in the experience working with the students of RCA, which is their capability to be cross-disciplinary and very holistic in their design process. So when you look at the project that came out from this collaboration, you see the students, even, for example, they are from design products or furniture, they never approach the theme only from that discipline point of view. You have people like Matthew or like Anna that are able to look at technology, user experience, materials, all these kind of elements, and kind of blend them together. And we always found this very open mindset and the capability to bridge across the disciplines. So it would be very interesting to know, for example, from Paul and Ashley, how does RCA structure the teaching to bring the students to be so able to cross across the disciplines?
Thank you, Roberto. Yes, I'd be happy to answer that. So certainly on design products, we have a series of different platforms, and the platforms each take a different kind of tangent into design. But I think part of this is a curated environment as well. So it's the type of thinking that goes on, and it's also some of the inputs. And I think we have a sort of philosophy of, I think, introducing kind of critique and questioning. So our students gain a lot of confidence in understanding how to question different situations, maybe different products, different design approaches, different solutions. There's a huge global mix of students as well, and there's a range of different kind of backgrounds, levels of industrial experience, and there's collaborations across different design disciplines in the school as well. So all those types of inputs create this kind of rich, fertile landscape. I think one thing that we do very much as teachers is we try and delimit our students. So we try and give people space or permission to think very differently about the types of design futures that we might be facing.
I think the other thing I would add to that is that our students at the RCA are very good at taking risks and thinking intuitively. And I think this project is very, very exciting indeed, because they're approaching the project with very fresh thinking and very fresh assumptions. And as human beings, we're incredibly adaptable, sometimes to the point where we can take a very poor product and still make it appear very, very successful because we are so adaptive. But a project like this is very, very exciting indeed, because when people start to think about innovation and thinking about individuality and developing a service and a product that is absolutely intuitive to use, then it's great. It's a great process to watch, where innovation sometimes can be highly successful, but our students are also very capable of designing things to the point where things will break or fail. And that's where I think some of the biggest learning outcomes come from. They're taking risks all the time and they're pushing the boundaries. And I think that's a real factor across all the disciplines within the School of Design.
You all touched on this very exciting point that is full of potential of mixing an educational institution with industry, because educational institutions, to a degree, they're a little bit isolated from the world. It's a key feature to allow the students to be taking risks where the consequences are not as they are in real life. And it really comes in its own element when you then place them in a commercial environment. It puts you as a member of a commercial company in the role of a mentor, of a tutor. Matthew, a question to you. If you had to pin down what was the most valuable part of this experience and what's next?
I guess now it's the visibility that OPPO, the way that we showcase our project is going to be an important part. How a student like just freshly graduating going to make our first step in the design world somehow. I think that's really, really interesting to be associated with a brand like OPPO, mostly when you are walking around the same topic and with technology. It was really interesting to get this mentoring and this tutoring to really understand all the steps, and hopefully after this school, like being able to step alone in this world of design.
Juju and Roberta, this is for you. Could you tell us a little bit about how the actual process of the project went about? How were you able to support the students?
We started discussing with RCA. Obviously, we had a few rounds of discussion about the theme. Once we settled to the idea of humanizing technology, which for us was a very important theme to understand also the element of, let's say, digital well-being, which is becoming so important. We established a series of seminars within RCA that we conducted. Initially, a seminar about lifestyles and about the way the students could approach this theme from different angles, looking at what was happening in different areas of the electronic industry. And then a second series of seminars where we involved both our designers from London and designers from the HQ in China that came to RCA and gave some public lectures to the students, explaining our approach, for example, in terms of color, material, and finishings, or also from our side, some technologies and technology areas that we were exploring from the European Design Centre. So we fed to the student this type of information initially so that they could start designing. And then after the pandemic hit, since it was much more difficult for us to keep being in touch with the students, we set a series of tutorials remotely via Zoom, where we revised the project together with the students and tried to give them as much feedback as possible on how to improve them or how they could, let's say, look at some elements of the brief that from our point of view were most valuable.
Ashley and Paul, a question to you. So when an external partner like that enters a collaboration with the college, it's as if you're handing your students over to some kind of foster tutor in a way. What would you like the students to learn or to take with them from these collaboration projects?
Yeah, I think, Alon, one of the big things students take away from these kind of collaborations is understanding, you know, the thinking and the priorities and how people in different commercial organisations, you know, think and act and work. And it's great to work with OPPO. It's a top global brand. Students feel very proud to have it in their portfolios. It can help them to gain employment. It's great to have it as part of one of their projects. And it's also just to gain that kind of one-to-one feedback and to get maybe advice, support, mentoring, criticism on their projects, and to understand, you know, some of the differences between, say, how a commercial partner might view one of their designs versus one of the tutors. And of course, sometimes it's very similar, and other times it's actually quite different.
I would agree with what you've just said. I think it's a very, very exciting opportunity, and we're very, very grateful for these opportunities and for our students to have access to some of the best companies in the world and some of the best thinking and current age thinking. I think it's a fantastic opportunity for students to really learn and test directly, not just within an educational setting, but within industry. And the closer that we can take them to that level with our partners allows them to gain a huge amount of experience. And it also creates a fantastic platform for them to leap from when they leave the Royal College of Art. So it builds confidence, it builds relationships, and that sort of intellectual exchange and throwing around the creative ideas and innovation, I think, is highly valuable and takes it away from just not being a studio context setting, but stepping with one foot into industry and manufacture, I think, is highly valuable for our students, and we welcome that a great deal.
I think I'd probably add in a final point from me as well. It's always interesting when we do these collaborations because we work with external partners, companies like OPPO, and some of the students are super enthusiastic about the brand and they dive straight in. Other students may be a little bit more skeptical, so you actually get a really interesting kind of range of designs and, kind of cross-section of reactions. As a college, we offer that third space. That space which is safe to do maybe some more experimental thinking. We can try out different ideas, and so it works very well for companies like OPPO and our students and the academic staff. There's a great exchange of knowledge and thinking as we develop these types of projects.
If I could add one more thing, it would be very interesting also to know from Anne and Mathieu about their experience. What have they found most valuable across the range of activities in the collaboration, very honestly, and what would you expect to do more in the future? Was this how you imagined it, or do you think there is something that we can provide when collaborating with education more or better that would be incredibly valuable for us?
I think Anna had this chance to be able to see what the London Design Centre from OPPO looks like and how you work. Like, I'm thinking maybe it would have been fantastic to spend a week with you, like the way you work, understand what are your tasks and how you manage them. And even further, going to China and having a look to the big headquarters or even the factory, how you produce your phone and what is working with technology and working with OPPO. I think that will be very interesting because this is something that definitely students don't have the opportunity, and that would be really fantastic.
There's a great lack of understanding of the manufacturing, the actual process of what happens to the things that we design here. Where do they go to get manufactured in order to be shipped back to us? So this could be a point for really valuable input from OPPO. One more question that comes up in the context of these collaborations is OPPO being a company that manufactures predominantly phones. We know you from the technology. And the students from their side, they arrive with projects that quite literally, shoot to the moon. In the case of one of our projects, it's aiming at Mars. How do these projects actually find relevance or applications in the context of your company? Does any of that actually lead into being incorporated in a product? Do any of these ideas land and grow?
We do have research institute in OPPO, and also us, London Design Centre, we're doing something different from what headquarters is doing. So I think that's probably more relevant to us. And also following Matthew's point on the kind of factory visits, this kind of things, that was actually one of our initial plans at the first year when we were talking about what's after the project. But I think for last year, because we end after Milan Design Week, and then all students are busy working on, and this year, because of this difficult isolation times, it's being more problematic to travel around. I think this is something we can actually plan to see how we can work around to have some kind of a week trip to headquarters or our London office, or kind of workshop that we both learn from each other. I think that's definitely something we can think about.
I want to thank you, everyone, for taking part in this discussion. Roberto, Juju from the OPPO team, Paul and Ashley from Design Products team, Anne and Matthew from the Design Products students. Looking forward to seeing all your works on our online show. Lovely. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.